11 Investigates revisited the murder case of Heather Bogle on the 10th anniversary of her death early this month. Heather was found murdered in the trunk of her car.
We told you how the case blew wide open a series of botched investigations and corruption within the Sandusky County Sheriff's Office.
And tonight, Melissa Andrews explains what happened, how it was revealed, and why there are still families who won't get answers.
Where do you think the appropriate place to start to describe what has happened here?
I think you start right before Heather Bogle. That particular detective did not do it correctly from the beginning.
I think we probably wrote an editorial that Heather Bogle was going to have a hard time getting justice. Right from the get-go, we were questioning O'Connell's ability to solve this crime. And then back then we had an editorial page editor who was also a cartoonist. And he drew a cartoon in which Lady Justice was in the trunk of a car. And it was powerful. It was probably one of the best political cartoons that showed what the problem was.
According to Sandusky Register editor Matt Westerholt, the problem was Bogle's murder and other incidents were being investigated by Detective Sean O'Connell, who had a history of botching cases.
By that time, we had been suspicious of Sean O'Connell because of the Jacob Lombarios investigation, which was the accidental suicide, which didn't make sense to us at all, and other cases, the Lee Nos investigation, which was ruled an accident when it was probably manslaughter at best. So we suspected Detective O'Connell was not up to the challenge of solving a homicide.
3 years before Bogle's murder, Jacob Lombarios died by a gunshot wound while with his friends.
The Jacob Lombarios case was so tragic. He was the 19-year-old who died by accidental suicide, which was completely false.
They ruled it a suicide without literally any investigation at all.
With O'Connell at the helm, no measurements were taken, no sketches made, no gunshot residue testing, and the slug from the bullet wasn't matched to the gun.
It's been a struggle to get anything done, to find out any answers.
His death was ruled a suicide within hours. That started a Justice for Jake campaign, with friends and family saying, if anything, his death was accidental, not suicide.
What we're really doing this for is for his daughter. I mean, she doesn't deserve to know or need to know that her dad shot himself, because there's no way he would have done that to her.
BCI took over the investigation in 2013, and a grand jury said Jake did not commit suicide. It was an accident.
The Lombarios case was the first one where, and in my opinion, the first one that really garnered people's attention into how dysfunctional the sheriff's office was and how dysfunctional it was from the top down.
And Detective O'Connell, who also worked for Fremont Police, was lead investigator on a case in 1999 when Lee Nos was left in a dumpster and crushed in a garbage truck outside a bar.
The trash guy comes, picks it up, dumps it in there, and kills him. And nobody was ever held accountable for that. And that was a Detective O'Connell case.
Many people reported that it was a Sandusky County Sheriff's deputy who put Nos in the dumpster. Here's one of those tips.
That guy passed out in the bar, and at closing time they threw him in the dumpster just as a joke, not thinking that anything would happen, and everything got buried.
The case was reopened in 2015 when Fremont Police was accused of covering up evidence, and a grand jury determined in 2016 that evidence didn't establish a crime. But the special prosecutor did admit the investigative file was incomplete.
That's how we came to a history of botched cases, was families came forward to tell us what happened to them. You know, Lee Nos's mother called me once, and she was too afraid to follow through on it. But we put that story out there.
Then comes April 9th, 2015 and the murder of Heather Bogle. Sean O'Connell is once again lead detective.
How do you even comprehend as a law enforcement officer the idea that someone, and it happens, would blatantly, potentially put 3 people away to prison for the rest of their lives, knowing that there's a high probability that they had nothing to do with it, and someone else who did is still out there?
I don't know that I can answer that question adequately, because it rocks me to my very core of what I believe and how I got into this job in the first place. But some people, it was more important to solve things than it was to solve them correctly. And I think that's kind of where he was at.
Melissa has part 2 on the botched investigation into Heather Bogle's murder tonight at 11.
Yeah, plus we will also tell you about a woman in her killer's past who also died and whose family continues to question why her death wasn't investigated properly.
You can also get even more about this case right now on WTOL 11 Plus. In our WTOL 11 case files, Melissa sits down with lead investigator Brian Duggar and Sandusky Register executive editor Matt Westerhold as they discuss the bizarre circumstances of this case.